Chapter 2. It was the year 1897. The children of our family had grown up. The older girls were very happy. My sister Agatha had already married Rocco Mirabella. My sister Brigida was 17 years old and felt it was time to fall in love. As the custom was to be very strict at the time, they were not permitted to go out alone without a chaperone to accompany them. Their lives were limited and restricted. The only way there was for a boy to meet a girl, or vice versa, was from a distance, or from a balcony, or maybe at a house party where there was dancing and music. Alcamo had a brass band made up of young men who loved music. The town offered them a bandmaster who taught them how to play the instruments which suited them best. They had formed a good band, and in the summer they gave concerts in the main square for the enjoyment of the people. One of our aunts lived near the square, and her balcony faced it. So during the concert season, we had the opportunity of sitting on her balcony and listening to the music. In between musical numbers, the musicians had a chance to look around and flirt with the young ladies on the balconies. It must have been in these circumstances that my sister Brigida met the young man. He was a young blond fellow who played the cornet, and evidently, with their eyes, they began their telepathic flirtation. It did not stop there. During the night, this young man, probably after rehearsals, came under my sister's balcony window with a few other musicians and played sentimental serenades. He did this more than once. When you keep a bird closed in a cage, it's bound to fly as soon as it can to freedom. The same is the case with girls who are kept so strictly at home. One night, when all the members of the family were fast asleep, Brigida made a bundle of the most necessary things and eloped with this young man. The next morning, when she was discovered missing, my parents became desperate and did not know what to do. Padre went to my uncle Gaetano for help, asking him to find out where she had gone and what could be done for my sister's future to cover up the disgrace. Uncle Gaetano, who was a resourceful man, said immediately that he would help. In a moment of rage toward this young man, who had dared dishonor our family, Uncle Gaetano swore, "If I get him, I will make him die like a rat." I was there with my father, and I can remember how horrified he was at the idea. Padre was a peace-loving, kind man. He cried, "My God, I don't want any violence. I just want to find them and erase the disgrace by having them get married in an honorable way." A whole week passed before we heard from the runaway couple. They wanted Padre's consent to get married. He asked her to come home to prepare the proper things, as was the custom of those days. The girl's family prepared a trousseau as well as furniture to set up a decent home. Brigida came home, and it was several months before my parents could accumulate the necessary items for the trousseau. The time came when Pepino, Brigida's young man, was to come to our house to inspect the trousseau, which was displayed in one room. There were the required dozen of each type of linen and articles necessary to last through a long married life, as well as some furniture for their home. Pepino was a tailor who worked in someone's shop. He had not started a business on his own, and evidently had very little means to support a wife. This pretentious person began to examine and scrutinize the trousseau with a sense of superiority. He asked my father about the furniture, wanting to know what he had ordered. Padre informed him, and he had the nerve to say he was not satisfied. Padre was stunned by his boldness and asked, "What have you got to offer my daughter?" With a sarcastic air of superiority, he retorted, "Me, myself." He was a short little fellow, at least 3 inches shorter than Brigida, one of our town's beauties. Losing his temper with that petulant retort, Padre slapped Pepino across the face, first one cheek, then the other, and ordered him out of the house. Pepino walked away, threatening he would be back to cause trouble. It was late, 10 o'clock that evening, when he returned to make trouble. As my father had expected, there was immediate action. Pepino Solano returned to cause trouble with 3 of his brothers for reinforcement. They knocked at the door leading to the first floor of our house. Padre, looking down from our balcony, saw the 4 men. Realizing the intentions of the 4, we did not answer the door. Getting no response, they tried the ground floor door, but again, we did not answer their knocks. They tried to force the door down, and my big brother, Pepino, tried to hold it closed. But even with my help, it looked as if it was giving way to the 4 people pushing it, in spite of the iron bar across the door. I stood close to my brother, terrified of the consequences. Pepino, in desperation, with the 4 trying to force the door down, went for his revolver and opened the door just a bit, enough to push the revolver through the space. Pointing it skyward, he'd fired twice to scare the intruders away. Of course the 4 ran for their lives, thinking the gun was aimed at them. As they ran off, my brother went to hide the revolver under the mattress of the bed we had had on the ground floor. Then he slipped out of the house and went to hide in my uncle's house nearby. The 2 shots, in the stillness of the evening, echoed as far as the town square, sounding like 4 shots instead of 2. The carabinieri, our town policeman, heard the shots and came running to our house to investigate. Since our door was still open, they entered the ground floor, and I was there alone and scared to death, trembling like a leaf with all that was happening, especially when the carabinieri began to search for the weapon. They went to the bed and lifted the corner of the mattress, but thank God they didn't see the gun, which was all the way under it. They left after asking many questions, and I thought it was all over. I breathed a sigh of relief. But in no time, 2 more carabinieri came again and started to look further. They lifted the mattress higher and, of course, discovered the revolver. That gun incriminated my brother Pepino because he had no license, and so he was arrested. When the trial came, he would have to prove that he had used it in self-defense. Nearby our house there was an old castle that was used as a prison. I remember my poor brother was kept there for a few months until the case came to trial, at a court in the town of Trapani. During the period of his internment, La Madre, my mother, prepared lunch for Pepino, and I was the one that had to deliver it every day at noon. The time came for the trial, and they had to transport the prisoner, my brother, to Trapani. He was supposed to be placed in a cart drawn by 2 horses with 2 mounted carabinieri, 1 at each side of them. My family was desperate. Imagine the humiliation they had to suffer, seeing their innocent son in handcuffs, conducted like a criminal, in an open cart for all the people to see. They begged the authorities to allow Pepino to be transported in a closed carriage with the shades down, and they would pay for the expenses. I could still see that scene vividly. My brother, accompanied by the carabinieri, leaving for Trapani. It will live in my memory forever. All this trouble with Brigida's young man, of course, could not end their romance. A marriage between them had to be concluded. Once a young woman has been away from home with her lover, even for one night, there must be a marriage union, or her future is ruined. To save her honor, they had to get married, or she'd be destined to spinsterhood or forced to join a convent. My brother Pepino was set free after 3 months of jail. Brigida was married and led her own life. What kind of life? Continuous fights and quarrels with this man of a quarrelsome nature, of poor education, brought up by a mother of similar character. She had lived in sin, bearing 4 children with no father to guide them. The character of my brother-in-law never changed. He always found something to fight about. And I must admit, my sister Brigida didn't help the situation. She was not a patient, prudent person, nor was she calm and tolerant. She was a nervous type who rebelled against his unjustified, petulant jealousy and argumentative attitude. Brigida was a good mother and a hard worker, and when they immigrated to America years later and her husband opened a men's tailor shop, she helped with the sewing as well as doing all the housework and raising 5 children. She shortened her own life and developed tuberculosis, passing away at the age of 47 with her children on their way to a good fortune.